Well, hello class. We have finished the respiratory system, and now we begin urinary system, and then fluid electrolytes will be a smaller part of that. So first of all, before I get to that, hopefully you did the respiratory lab. It's doing this Sunday evening, so hopefully you'll do it by tonight. And in there, you saw, I kind of described what we would have been doing. And here's some data from last year I thought would be kind of interesting to share. Just if you remember, to figure out capacities and volumes, you can estimate them based on a person's age, sex, and height. But again, there's a lot of variables involved there. And just looking here at our class data from last year, you can see I have height along the x-axis and then vital capacity. And you can see it's a pretty nice line there looking at as you get taller, which means you're a bigger person, you have bigger chest cavity, bigger lungs. But quite a bit of slop. You know, you look at some of this is going to be experimental error. You guys have been there. But some of it will be just normal variation. You get a tall person with a smaller chest or a shorter person with a bigger chest, you're going to have that kind of variation there. And then looking a little more details, you can see here, I separate out the sex here with the red being female and then blue being male. And you can see generally, obviously height is generally taller in males and females. You can see that. And then the slope is a little bit different too, I found. Interesting, I'm not sure exactly what that means, but you can see that. And then from the literature, actually, if you take a look at it, you look at the higher line above. This higher line above is males, and females will be below that. So what we're seeing is that in general, at the same given height, that males generally have larger vital capacities than women. So that's kind of interesting. All right. So this urinary system, and if you remember, I talked about the exams. This can be a little tricky chapter when I get to the physiology of the kidney tubules. We're just going to give you some of it. I mean, you can go much deeper. You can YouTube some videos and look at this to help yourself. And it goes far beyond what I'm going to tell you, but I'll give you the basics, what I want you to know in terms of the kidney physiology. But it's a little tricky in there. So first of all, you think about your urinary system, it's just amazing in that, for one thing, no matter how much you drink, let's say one day you're just going to dehydrate yourself, drink minimally. The other day you're just going to carry around a milk jug full of water and just hydrate the hell out of yourself, right? No matter how much you bring in, you pee out the same amount. I mean, you lose some water in breathing and sweating, but most of it's in your urine. And this ability we have, because if you didn't lose the same amount you gained, you'd end up blowing up or shrinking like a raisin, right? So yeah, on that day where you drank all the water, you peed a lot. You had a very dilute and a lot of volume of urine. And on those days where you didn't drink, you just peed out a small amount of dark urine. So incredible. And then if you decide to eat a whole bag of pretzels, if you looked at your urine hours later, it'd be very salty. And that happens with magnesium and calcium and all these different ions in your blood. It takes care of your blood composition. And it can do individually. You can meter the amount of all the electrolytes. Very, very cool. And it's a way we get rid of toxic substances and drugs, that penicillin that you take. Eventually it gets broken down and you pee that out as well. Yeah. In terms of your pH, it's very important also, keeping how acidic or alkaline you are. The number one way you can quickly change your pH, you guys should know. You know, right? Breathing, your lungs. If you hold your breath, you're going to become more acidic because carbon dioxide is going to turn to carbonic acid. And if you hyperventilate, you become more alkaline as you pump out more carbon dioxide. So that happens pretty rapidly. But another way your kidneys do it at a slower rate is that you pee out hydrogen ions, right? And urine is usually on the acidic side because a lot of our metabolism, we end up with more acidity than alkalinity. But it depends on your diets and what you're doing. But your kidneys can help maintain your pH, you know, and your lungs. Yeah. So your body fluids, your pH, your homeostasis of all of your different constituents that are found in your plasma and your body fluids. So cool. Yeah. So we have a pair of kidneys. We have a right and a left kidney. You can live with one kidney, obviously, because people can donate a kidney, right? You can live with probably 3/4 of a kidney. But when you start getting less and less than that, you start having issues, and you'll see them first in things built up in your blood. Because what the kidneys do, you think about it as generating waste, but they filter the blood. So it's the waste in the blood. Mostly nitrogenous substances. When you break down proteins and such, you need to get rid of that. Your digestive waste is separate. That's what you eat and what you don't digest. But the urine is going to be a filtrate of your blood. And it's a way that we keep our homeostasis by keeping the acidity correct, keeping all the different ions at their right levels, and the total fluid volume too. Yeah. And we look at high blood pressure. We talked about hypertension. We did the cardiovascular system. A lot of drugs work at the kidney because the more blood volume you have, the more plasma, which is 93% water, the higher your blood pressure. And so medications like diuretics will make you pee more, less blood volume, lower blood pressure. Beautiful. And then so you have a right and left kidney. If you take a look, you can see your right kidney is slightly lower than your left. You have your liver is kind of in the way. And then the two tubes that come down are your ureters. And the kidneys and the ureters are stuck behind that membrane, the back of your abdominal wall. And they drain into your urinary bladder, which sits down in your pelvis. And it's a reservoir. It holds the urine. Doesn't concentrate or anything like that. It just holds the urine until you're ready to pee. And then the urine goes from there out the urethra to the outside. All right, so what waste are we really filtering out of our blood? We're really talking about nitrogenous waste. If you burn carbs, it's going to be what? Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. That's going to be, waste products will be water, carbon dioxide, right? But if you're burning proteins and you're burning nucleic acids, you're going to have amino acids have amino groups, nitrogen in it. And right away, the nitrogen will combine with hydrogen to make ammonia. And ammonia is toxic, it's not good stuff to build up in your blood. And if you're a fish, you just pee it out all the time. No problem. For us, we want to retain water, so we concentrate a little more and we produce urea. This is a molecule of urea. So you can see it has 2 nitrogens. So you got rid of twice as much as getting rid of ammonia. And you got a carbon and an oxygen you can see on there. So making urea, it's also soluble in water, so we can concentrate in our urine and get rid of it that way. But it takes energy. When you make that, or you can see on the right, this uric acid. Wow, you got rid of even more ammonia. That takes energy. It takes ATP, your liver, other cells are going to put the nitrogens together to make these urea and uric acid. So it's more costly to make it instead of just getting rid of nitrogen, but it's a little safer way to store it. The urea and uric acid are less toxic than ammonia. The uric acid is somewhat soluble in water, but not as much. We'll talk more about that. So again, if you're a fish, even if you're a beaver or a muskrat that lives in an aquatic environment, you're not concerned with water. You get as much water as you need. But once we came onto land, then all of a sudden water became more of a premium, and we learned to conserve that water. We can't just wash out dilute ammonia as if you lived in a lake. Sharks actually build up urea in their tissues. If you buy some shark meat at Hannaford, and here's some people say you want to soak it in milk to get rid of some of that urea. That's kind of an interesting thing. And then reptiles, birds and reptiles. If you ever look at their waste, like bird poop on this car, it's white, and that white paste that you see is uric acid. So uric acid, not very soluble in water, and it often makes this white paste. You see if you keep snakes or birds, lizards, you'll see that uric acid is what they give off. Often be the white, and then in bird poop they'll be like green or purple. That's the digestive waste. They just have one opening, birds and reptiles, and their waste from their digestive tract and their kidneys and their reproductive tract, the eggs and such, go through that same cloaca, it's called, it's sewer, one hole, instead of having a urethra and an anus like that. Yeah. It's also uric acid, if you keep a snake, something like a lizard, it doesn't smell, as opposed to keeping mice or rabbits. Urine gives off that ammonia smell. But uric acid is, pretty much odorless, I believe. It's just white, kind of pasty solid. Yeah, so there you go. You can see uric acid, you're getting rid of 4 nitrogens, right? Urea 2, ammonia just 1. And also with reptiles, because they're in an egg, it's a way to concentrate the waste instead of using a lot of water. And a bird doesn't want a bladder filled with fluid, with pee, because it weighs it down. So everything about a bird is to make it lighter for flight. And so that's part of it also. And just as an aside, I won't ask you this, but spiders get rid of nitrogen with guanine. Pretty cool. And so they use this as an indicator of bed mites, spider activity, because mites are arachnids too. And because that's what they give off, and the amount of that's going to be proportional to the amount of mites or spiders you have. Some guy even got a tattoo. Must be very dedicated. All right, so we are made out of about 60% water, our bodies. We're mostly water. And so you may ask yourself, like, how much of my water, how dehydrated can I be before I die? And for humans, it's pretty surprising that it's only about 12% of our water is all we can lose. And then after that, death. So see why it's important for us to not lose a lot of water and be able to take in enough water. Our kidneys will help us. If you're trapped in the desert, your kidneys will quickly switch to concentrating your urine and not being very stingy about giving up the water. All right, let's look at these kidneys. So amazingly, these kidneys make up less than 1% of your body weight. They're not that big. And yet they'll get between 15 or 30% of your blood. So each heartbeat, think about on average, about a quarter of your blood is going through these kidneys. And the kidneys are filtering it, right? They're going to filter the blood and modify it. And then the remaining blood that comes out of your kidneys has less nitrogenous waste in it and has the proper water electrolyte concentrations that you want. The urine, how much you pee is a personal thing. Depends how much you're drinking, 1-2 liters a day. And that urine, that yellow fluid, is a filtrate of your blood. It's mostly water. It's like your blood plasma is mostly water. But then you're going to see it has very little of the good stuff, like glucose, amino acids. And it's filled with things you want to get rid of, like urea and creatinine, sulfates and phosphates. Things that are waste will be put into that. And I have to say also your kidneys, and people that have, it's called CKD, chronic kidney disease or acute kidney disease, they have other issues too that go along with it, because there's, I'll talk about 3 other things that happen in the kidney. One is that you produce the hormone erythropoietin. And that is what tells your bone marrow to make more red blood cells. So if you have kidneys are failing, you're often anemic, right? Because you're not making enough blood cells. So the cells that make erythropoietin are not related to the rest of the kidney function, but they happen to be harbored in the kidney. And then we will talk about this renin. Renin is a hormone given off, an enzyme given off by the kidney cells, you're going to see, in response to low blood pressure. And when your blood pressure drops, kidneys give off renin. The kidneys are actually monitoring your blood pressure. And this renin will cause a cascade of events that are going to do a lot of things to help bring that blood pressure up so you can survive. And then I added on here also vitamin D. It's a place in the kidneys is where you finally activate vitamin D into the active form. So you need your kidneys. That's where that happens. I like this. I was just looking at this illustration here. You can see your kidneys high up in the back of your abdominal cavity. And those last few floating ribs give them a little protection. The tops of them anyway. And this huge artery here, y'all should know what that is. That's your aorta, your abdominal aorta. And these big renal arteries are going to serve the kidneys with a lot of blood, right? All right, amazingly, kidneys happen to be kidney-shaped. That's a kind of a joke. Obviously, we named them kidney beans because they're shaped like kidneys. It goes that direction. These are beautiful kidneys here. We don't eat a lot of kidneys. The Europeans eat a lot more organ meats, but you can cook kidneys too. They are what's called retroperitoneal. And so in your abdominal cavity, there's like a saran wrap coating all around it. And this has been a common theme in this class. That's the parietal peritoneum. And the kidneys are behind it, and the ureters are stuck behind it, which has some implications. It's pretty cool. If you want to do surgery on a kidney or remove a kidney, you can do it from the back instead of the front, and you can not have to enter that peritoneal cavity where you could introduce some infection. So they're in your back, and they're covered in the front with this membrane back there. And they've got tons of fat, this perirenal fat, just inches of fat around your kidneys too. They're going to help protect and insulate your kidneys. Yeah. Oh, there's a cool view looking at a transverse section. And what we're seeing here definitely is this, let's see, here it is, this membrane here. Yeah, it's going to be this peritoneum. Remember we had a parietal pleura and visceral pleura? This could be the parietal peritoneum, same thing. And the kidney you can see is behind it. It's retroperitoneal, it's behind it. It's surrounded by a bunch of fat. There's another fascia that cover it. So well protected back there. It's not completely anchored. It's tethered by some ligaments and fascia, but you'll have people with a hypermobile kidney where the kidney will actually move more than it's supposed to. When you guys jog and run, it does go up and down, but just a little. But the fat usually keeps it in place there. And patients that are really emaciated, they'll lose that fat and the kidneys will become hypermobile, and the ureter can pinch, etc. if it's moving too much, and that can cause problems. Yeah. You guys recognize where we're at here? You can see here's the backbone here. Yeah, and you can see the approximate locations of your kidneys drawn right there. Yeah, and so again, going from the front wouldn't make much sense if you can turn the patient over and be able to go from the back there. And what's causing, you can see, one to be a couple centimeters, a centimeter or two higher, is that this liver just takes up some room, and so that right kidney is a little bit lower. Left kidney can go up a little bit higher. They're both way in the back. All right, well now I'm going to go ahead and draw the anatomy of a kidney. And you can see here, besides the kidneys, don't forget right on top of it, from our first section of this class this semester, we talked about the adrenal glands. You can see they sit above it. They've got adrenal artery and veins or suprarenal artery and veins. Not really related to the rest of kidney function. They're separate from the kidney. There's a membrane in between them, so they're separate, but they're just always right above the kidneys. Call it adrenal or suprarenal. They're right above it. All right, let me draw a kidney for you here. All right, so draw a big kidney. Let's see here. I'll go like this. Okay, kidney bean shaped. And that's it's gonna come in there quite a bit. Yeah. And then this region right here where it comes in is the hilus or hilum. The hilus is this kind of indentation. And in there, you're going to see the big, huge renal artery and then also massive, renal vein. So this is going to be renal artery and vein. Tremendous. Again, taking a quarter of your blood to the two kidneys. So it's quite a bit. And then this region, the region in here, can be called the renal sinus. There's just a space in there, and through it run the artery and vein. There's a bunch of fat. And then also, you're going to have a very important tube leaving it, purple. This is your ureter. Yeah, so the right and left ureters carry the pee or urine away from the kidney. Yeah, and then there'll be lymphatics and nerves going there also. But that hilus is where all these things come in and out, that indentation of the kidney right there. Outside of the kidney, just a little bit, you're going to see covering it is going to be a renal capsule. So if the capsule is it's connective tissue, like a film that just coats the whole thing. And on top of it, I need to draw it up, but this is going to be tons of fat. So tons of adipose tissue, inches sometimes of adipose tissue completely surrounding the kidney. All right, let's get into it. If we look in the kidney, the first thing you see, I'm going to draw the pyramids, the renal pyramids. Yeah, so you got these pyramids. Yeah, why not? Let's go ahead and throw a bunch in there. And the lab goes right through all this anatomy that you'll do. I'll post that tonight too. The whole lab you do this week goes through the anatomy, a little bit of the histology, and then talk about next week. We'll talk about urine and urine formation, but I want to make sure you get this anatomy down completely. So these are called the renal pyramids. They look kind of like pyramids. Remember, this is a two-dimensional picture, but they're actually three-dimensional. So imagine a pyramid, and the little tip out here is the top of the pyramid. We call that little tip right there the renal papilla. Everything kidney is renal, right? Renal function, renal papilla, renal pyramids, renal arteries, so renal kidney, right? So the papilla is a little tiny nubbin on the top. That's what a papilla is, a little nipple, a little protuberance like that. That's where the pyramid comes to the top. And we'll see out of the papilla is where the urine is going to drip out. So it's going to come out of there. And just to make these pyramids a little more realistic, they look like this. Even in gross anatomy, looking at them, you kind of see these striations because what you're seeing, again, this is microscopic, are a whole bunch of parallel tubes. So it has that kind of look to it. The outside has a granular look, it's like soil maybe, but the pyramids have these like stripes. You can just see there's blood vessels and tubes that are all going the same direction, so it has kind of that look to it. Now, overall, when you look at a whole kidney, we talk about this outer portion right here is going to be the cortex, and the whole inner portion is going to be the medulla. And remember, these are common terms, the adrenal gland. Remember, we had a cortex and a medulla. So the medulla is the inner part, and the cortex is the outer part. Yeah. Now the cortex, actually, it comes, so the pyramids are part of the medulla. The cortex dives down between the pyramids. This part that comes down we call the renal columns. So the columns are part of the cortex that dives down in between each of the pyramids. All right, I think we're doing pretty good so far. So let's talk about how the urine is collected, because it's going to drip off those papilla. It's going to drip off and be collected in these series of tubes that are going to bring it down to the ureter so it can go down to the bladder. So I'll use green. And so you're going to see each one of these pyramids, the little papilla. I'll make this one join it too. Let's draw it here, and then we'll draw it here. Major like this. And then there'll be others that come and join it. We'll just close it off here. Yeah, diagrammatic indeed, but these are called the calyces. Calyces, and so that's plural. And we call the individual ones, and I'll put a little dot here, 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 here. Those are the minor calyces. Singular would be calyx with an X like that. And then they come together to make 2 or 3 big, maybe there's one missing here, big major calyx. What did I do? There we go. Yeah. Shit. It's not great, but major calyx will be there. The minor calyx, I'll make the little dots. There, now it's coated. So there's a minor for each one of the pyramids, or maybe a couple pyramids sometimes go into one minor. But then the minors come together into 2 or 3 big major calyces, like major rivers that come from the little tributaries. And they're all going to drain into this region here we call the renal pelvis. So the pelvis is where all these the calyces drain, and all of it is a shiny white lining, and it's just going to be a passageway for urine. So the urine's going to drip out of the pyramids, the papilla off the tips, into a minor calyx. 2 or 3 minor calyces, or 3 or 4, will come together to make a major calyces, and these few major calyces will come into the pelvis, this region in the middle where all the urine drains, and then the pelvis will turn into the ureter it will narrow like a funnel into the ureter that will leave to go all the way down to the bladder in your pelvis region. All right, let's see. I think that on there shows you the major parts of the kidney, gross anatomy wise. All right. Another view, taking a look at it here, you can see again that here, I'll use the same terminology to keep it so you guys understand. These are the minor calyces, right? Oh yeah, and then the major, I think I went like this. Oh, probably these coming together. And these holes here are ones that are coming. This is 3-dimensional. So you'll have pyramids all the way around, and some of them will be coming out at you, but we just cut it in this kind of a cut so you can just see them 2-dimensionally. So then, renal pelvis, beautiful. So this region is going to be the renal pelvis right there. And that will narrow like a funnel into this ureter. And the urine doesn't fall by gravity, but that ureter is muscular, smooth muscle, and it will push the pee down, push it down. Because even standing on your head, you can produce urine upwards. You don't need gravity. So that ureter has peristaltic waves that move down it that are going to push the pee. Depending on how much urine you're producing, it's how often that wave of muscular action will push it down into the bladder. Yeah. And then overall, you can cut a big chunk of the kidney. Human kidneys look smooth on the outside, but they're really made up of lobes that that coalesce to make it look smooth eventually. But the kidney is very loby, and I'll show you that here. I'll prove that to you. Here's looking at a couple other animals. There's a dolphin and a cow. Their kidneys look loby, right? And ours started out that way. Here's a fetal kidney, a human, and you can see it has lobes, and it's very loby. But as it matures, we get a smooth look to our kidney. It gets all smooth on the outside, roughly smooth. Some people's kidneys will have bumps on it. And honestly, for those of you in gross anatomy, if you look at kidneys, they're often gross looking. They got pock marks on them, or they'll have cysts on them. You can tell high blood pressure. It often looks like a kind of a granulated sugar look because the blood vessels will be kind of engorged. So when you look at a cadaver, it's 80, 90 years old. It's been, those kidneys are not smooth and like a young kidney, but they have lots of signs of age. Here's looking at a slice of fresh kidney. I just want to show you the difference between the cortex and medulla. You can see the cortex here has a different look. The medulla, even in a fresh kidney, has these what are going to be tubes. They're going to be parallel tubes of blood vessels and tubes that carry the urine. Oh, beautiful histological slide of the kidney. And again, this region is in the medulla, and then the cortex is up here. You can see they look different. And then, gorgeous. So you look at the tip of a pyramid. This is one papilla right here. And there'll be all kinds of little openings here. And then the urine will drip out into this space. And that space, remember, is a minor calyx. So the papilla drains into a minor calyx. The urine will collect there. Several minors will make a major. It'll be making its way out. And if you look at this pyramid, you see it's just a whole bunch of tubes, isn't it? A whole bunch of parallel tubes, everyone going north and south here. And those are the tubes that we'll talk about. And one more view, looking at the difference in the histology. You won't see any of these glomerulus. See these balls of capillaries? Won't see any of those in the medulla. They're only going to be in the cortex. All right? The medulla is simply going to be tubes, blood vessels, all parallel. But up in that cortex, you're going to see these, each kidney's going to have 1 million of these little balls like that. Take a look, it's just Tube City. That's an office reference, but Tube City, just looking at histology, all these tubes. And if you're really good at histology, you can differentiate proximal and distal, and which one is loops, all these things, and blood vessels in there. But for us, all those tubes are involved with making the urine, reabsorbing the good stuff, getting rid of the bad stuff, but all these tubes. As any good filter, it needs a lot of surface area. And the surface area of all of the capillaries in the glomerulus is about 2 square meters. It's about the same surface area as your skin. Just to give you an idea, it's a pretty big square, if you were to put it out there, of surface area where the blood's on one side and it pushes the water through this membrane we're going to talk about. So it's a big filtering membrane. All right, each kidney, the unit of a kidney is a nephron. A nephrologist, person that studies kidneys. And what the nephron is going to be, it's going to be what's called a renal corpuscle. Corpuscle is going to be this ball of capillaries with this cup around it to collect the filtrate. And then these tubes. We'll talk about these tubes. And the tubes are going to modify that filtrate, that fluid that comes out, mostly take back all the good stuff, and then get rid of some bad stuff and prepare it. See this collecting duct right here? Prepare the urine to be peed out down there. And so there's 1 million of these nephrons in each kidney. Gorgeous histological slide. Looking at it, you see all these tubes, see the parallel tubes, and then you see the glomeruli are these balls of capillaries. You can see those scattered throughout, those little circles. And we know we're in the cortex. And I see up top here, that's going to be that capsule, that tough kind of membrane that surrounds it. And just below is the cortex, filled, again, with 1 million of these balls of capillaries where the blood is going to be filtered out. And as you get deeper into the kidney, the medulla is all tubes. You don't have any more of those little corpuscles. The renal blood vessels. Distribution of blood, you need to know, I'll tell you what you need to know. Coming into it is going to be the renal artery. Huge renal artery. It's going to quickly split. It's going to split. It's going to go throughout the whole kidney. Most of it goes out to the cortex. And it's going to go through between each of the lobes. We'll call it interlobar. So between the pyramids are interlobar. Remember, the lobe is made of the pyramid and the cortex. So interlobar goes between the pyramids. And then when it hits the top of the pyramid, it's going to arc over. It's going to arc over, called the arcuate artery. It's going to arc over, and then it's going to radiate out into the cortex. Radiate out here. And you can see it used to be called interlobular, but I think we're going with cortical radiate, because that makes more sense. It's going to radiate in the cortex like the sun. It's going to radiate out like the rays. It's going to go out, and then we're going to see microscopically when we get down to it, there's going to be little tiny arterioles that go into this ball of capillaries, and then little tiny arterioles that leave the ball of capillaries. And you're going to know this, that the one going in is called afferent, A before E. Remember in the lymph node, we had afferent, efferent vessels coming in and out of it. So you're going to have afferent coming in, and then the glomerulus is going to be this ball, this tuft of capillaries. And then the blood vessel leaving that little ball of capillaries will be efferent. It's also alphabetical, A before E. Yeah, and so these are 2 arterioles go to this capillary bed in the middle. And then what happens after it leaves the glomerulus? What happens is that the capillaries usually just circle around all the tubes in order so that blood can reclaim things from the urine, from the filtrate. So we call that paratubular capillaries. How's that? It means around the tubes. And then it can go back to veins, to the same names. It'll be cortical radiate veins, arcuate veins, interlobar veins, renal vein. And some of those capillaries, instead of just going around the tubes, they're going to contribute to what we're going to talk about in a different lecture, but they're going to go down straight, deep into that medulla, following those big loops. And that's called the vasa recta. Remember, rectus means straight. We had a muscle rectus femoris. In the eye, we had the rectus muscles that move the eye. Rectus abdominis, your six-pack. So rectus means going straight. So these vasa means vessels, and so it's going to be the straight vessels that are going to go parallel to these loops, the loop of Henle or the nephron loop. So some will do that, taken very important, and then the veins will take it all the way back out. All right, so it sounds complicated, but you can see how we break it down for you here. Yeah. So renal artery comes in, renal vein is going to leave, it goes between the lobes, arcs over, radiates out, and then when we get down to the nephron, we're going to study quite a bit how the afferent goes into this glomerular capillary. Efferent's going to leave, it's going to go around the tubes, then everything goes backwards. The vein's all going to leave. All right, blood supply of the kidney. Sounds like a lot of terms, but it's not too bad. I put finally so I'd remember, so the last slide, showing you this is a cast, just gorgeous, where they inject latex through the arteries or veins and then let it harden, and then they digest away all the tissue, the kidney tissue, and it leaves it like a cast. And so the amazing vascularization of your kidneys, how many blood vessels are there? So cool. In this micrograph on the right, same thing, but it's been colorized, false. But you can see these little balls, these little tufts. Those are going to be the glomerular capillaries. They're going to filter the blood. The blood pressure is going to push the blood against this filter, and a lot of fluid's going to leave, go into these tubes where you take back most of the fluid, but the remaining will come out as your urine, a couple liters a day. All right, hopefully this was helpful, and we'll continue on getting right at the nephron and how your kidneys function.